Hi there, this Chuck with Pocket Snakes. I'm just finishing up a 28 plate bullwhip that's braided tip to hilt. And there's 14 strands on the left and 14 strands on the right. I've got a different phone I'm using. There's the camera. Hi there. Yeah, I'm doing okay. It's a pleasure. Thank you for joining me. I can read this phone because the screen's not cracked up on it. So just finishing up the platting on the 28 plate matched pair of bullwhips. So this is a thinner nylon sheathing that's pressed flat called whipmaker cord. It's less than half the thickness of 550 sheath or 275 sheath, which is about a millimeter thick. This is less than a half a millimeter thick. So it allows you to put more layers into a whip and create finer tapers. But you end up with higher plate counts. And we're working on this is 28 plate. So there's 14 strands in my right hand and 14 in my left. So and I'm not the fastest at this, but I care to keep the tension as even as I can. So this is a floating design, so all these strands start as 4 strands at the top, and I add 4 strands at a time until I got to 28. And I'm overlaying a 20 plate hand plated layer of just red. I haven't been streaming much lately, partially because the phone I use for streaming, well, the screen was cracked up on it, but then the battery split apart the case, and I decided I needed a different cell phone to live stream vertical videos. I started reverse braiding whips so there's nothing to come apart. And literally all the strands are installed on center bites. So the only place that the strands come together at the end is where they get bound together, cut off flush, and then welded at the hilt. It means that the whole top end of the whip can be shucked back and then shucked forward into place and reseated if need be, which is a different way of building a whip. But for shorter whips, it's very nice. I don't know that I'd try the method with a 16-foot rodeo whip. Just too much work. A little 3 or 4 foot whips. This is the way I tend to build them. And I'm putting about 30 pounds of tension into each strand as I go. But I'm plaiting loose after I tension and tighten the strand before I plait it. I'm not doing any fancy plating. This is pretty simple stuff. But made some nice product at the end. A lot of extra work goes into these. Got to find the right strand because they'll try and hide behind. So you should always double check. The strand you're tensioning is the one you think you're going to be tensioning. You don't want to cross 2 strands or leave something behind. Nice part with paracord is, or nylon, is it's a fabric. So if you want to pause what you're doing and lock the tension in place, You take a straight pin and just lock the strands in. Chazzy Lodges SG. Hi, how's it going? I can't really type that well on the cell phone while I'm trying to work, but I will try and answer questions if people want to know what I'm doing. So this is the first of the pair of this whip. Is a 275 paracord loop. It starts with black, and then I add 4 strands of red. Then I add 4 more strands of red. Now I've got a 12 plate, and then I add 4 more strands. Now I've got a 16 plate and 4 more strands. Now I've got a 16 plate, and then 4 more strands. Now I've got a 20 plate, and then 4 more strands. Right here it goes to 24 plate, and then 4 more strands, it becomes 28 plate. And this is not completely finished off. It's got a heel knot buildup and a NFC 215 chip. I've still got to tack everything together. This is a little mini, just to show you what I'm working on. So this is getting to the hilt where all the previous layer comes together, and it's barge cemented together to lock the tension in. And then I'll braid off the end of it and find the end of the steel handle, because there's a 6-inch steel rod in here, which is right in here. About 6 inches of steel rod. Which you can see the area that bends. This is about 6 inches of steel. And I sometimes use carbon fiber for the handles, but in this case I used 5/32 inch steel musical wire for the handle, which is just springy enough to add a bit of zing if you snap your wrist on a 3-foot web. I try and share what I do so that other people that want to make whips can see how I went about it. It's a lot more work than most people put into a whip. But I like the end result. And I'm one of those uncompromising people that I want it to do what I want it to do. I don't want it to have a mind of its own. So I use a more time consuming method than other people. And I have a lot of extra string on this because I went all the way to 28 blade on this instead of 24. I could have done the whole whip in 24. And I've been braiding on this for about an hour and a half. So it takes me a couple hours to put an overlay on. And 4 to 28 blade on a 3-foot whip. It takes a couple hours of work. Just the overlay. The underlayment has another hour and a half or 2 hours of platting. Plus the core construction takes a while because the core layers have multiple concentric layers. Got a bunch of videos on how I go about building the whips I build. So if you like this and want to see more of it, I didn't start streaming until I was already at 28 blade on this whip. The method's the same on the 4-foot whip that I did. It's just this is a 3-footer. So a shorter version of the 4-footer. And my hands are getting stiff and sore because I did this yesterday all day, on and off. But if you're interested in braiding and braiding whips, I've got a lot of content on here. It's not highly curated, but shows you different ways of going about doing the same thing. As I make whips that are braided in both directions, this one happens to be what I call an additive build. But instead of a strand dropping method. The end of this, I let it get away from me and it twisted a little bit as I was plating, but this is a solid handle, so it's not got to follow a path. but I locked all the tension in. So, and I'm not doing a lot of fancy plating with this. It's just a ring snake pattern. But if you have questions, I'll try and answer live. It's really hard to text on the phone to answer stuff because it's hanging off of a 90-degree boom about 2 foot off the tripod to get it where you can see this image. So anytime I touch it at all, the camera bounces around for 30 seconds. And the braiding videos are not my most popular videos. Cutting leather strips and beveling leather strips are far more popular. Watching somebody set and braid 28 strands in the same pattern is a bit like watching paint dry, probably, but I'm glad you guys are watching. I'm just going under half the strands and over half the strands to make this pattern. So in this case, it's under 7 over 7 because it's a 28 plate. There's 14 strands on the left and 14 strands on the right. Or another way to think of it is there's a black strand followed by 6 red strands, followed by a black strand, followed by 6 red strands on each side of the web. And the intersections make circles of rings that are V's. And as I go down, the angle will change from here to more vertical because we're coming down in diameter a little bit towards the handle because we're off the shop. But since the house is quiet, I don't have the dogs barking, I don't have anybody asking me questions, needing me to do stuff. It's a perfect time to turn on the camera because it's quiet. I don't end up with music or some television show on in the background. Conversations with other people in the background. Just peaceful breathing. Now, when you get down to where you're about to come off the end of the handle, remember I was saying earlier, if you were watching earlier, that it was in alignment all the way up here until it came down here. And I'm going to pin it in place, take the pin out, and trim back the strings. So the funny part is you can see this flat cord down here at the bottom is in perfect alignment with the stitching because there's layers of fabric that have the shot in it. Pull the pin. Trim this down. Trim these down. And I'm just going to braid over the end. And then I'll move the camera here in a minute for those of you still watching so that you can see me. So the end of the steel is right about here. But I've got to do a full pass past that point in order to fully covered and not have straggler strands. I got the blacks back at the top. Put a pin in it. I'll move the camera real quick. Pull the pin. And this is a simple whipmaker plate, so it's under 7/7 at 28 plate. And at 32 plate, it's under 8/8. But as you drop off of where the core is, this is going to get really bunched up and messy at the bottom because there's nothing to support keeping the strands straight against. To a certain extent, it doesn't matter because that part gets cut off. But it's nice to keep them straight where you can once you come off the end for as long as you can. And I know it probably make this look easier than it actually is, but it's a fairly simple pattern. So the hard part is really laying the strands so that they stay flat all the way around, because you don't want to twist. So twist makes a bump. You don't want bumps in a whip. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the black one is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 on the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 8th one is black again. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 on the left. And then see how that pin goes all the way through. Triangling it up a little bit. And it still goes through here, which means the pin is somewhere between. Let's move it up a joint. Goes all the way through. Up a joint. Now, see the end of the steel handle is right there. So I'll put the build up about an inch and use this pin as where I'm going to cut it off. That way I can weld all those strands together. And I'm going to put a pin in where we're at. So that locks the tension all together. And then barge cement. This brush spreads out to about 3/4 of an inch. That's about the width of the buildup I use. This is a beveled strip of veg tan that I'll use for the first layer of buildup. Just apply some word cement on that. Let it dry. There's a couple reasons to use like barred cement on an area. One is to be able to tack down the buildup, or they use leather, or rubber, or plastic. Um, the second is it locks all that tension off, so the tension stays in the whip. And that way, once you get your buildup on, you get 2 layers of buildup in this case to bring it out to an inch, because this is about 3/4 of an inch. Um, and the second reason is you don't want it to lose tension even if it's not pinned, and you cut it off once you get the buildup on there. You cut off all this. This becomes other braiding material for other smaller projects. I left extra. There's about a foot of extra tail. I could reduce it to 6 inches or 4 inches, but I recommend leaving the extra tails at about a foot, because you can do something with a foot of string, whereas if you have variable 2 to 6 inches of string, it's all waste. You can't use it for anything. And I hate wasting stuff. This Anybody have any questions or just want to say hi to Chuck the whipmaker from Pocket Snakes? You guys want to see what this looks like completed? This has a 275 paracord whip, 275 paracord loop through itself. And then this is the black strand you see there. There's 4 of them. And then I add 4 strands of red, it goes to 8 plate. Then I add 4 strands of red, it goes to 12 plate. And then I added 4 strands of red, and it goes to 16 plate. Then I added 4 strands of red, and it goes to 20 plate. And then I added 4 strands of red, it goes to 24 plate. And then I added 4 strands of red further down because of where the taper changes on this core, and it goes to 28 plate, and then it's 28 plate all the way on down the whip. And then there's the heel knot buildup where it's been cut off. And this is what the heel knot buildup looks like. This is what I'm going to build up there. And this is still not pinned, it's just glued together. And the joints are on opposite sides, so there's a joint here on the first layer. And then I start in the middle on the back with the second layer. That way the joints are on opposite sides of the whip. Just helps keep everything smoother. And this is a little plastic NFC 215 chip that's 25 millimeters. So it's a little bit bigger than an inch in diameter for the ball. And then there'll be 2 layers on each side, so 4 thicknesses of this cord, which is about 1/2 millimeter. So it'll add another 2 millimeters. So it'll be 1 1/8 for the ball. Plus I'll add probably some hockey tape for rubbery, and to color this so that you don't see any natural leather between the strands of decorative knot. But that's what the whip looks like when it's done. This is part of a matched pair of 3 foot. This is a 3-foot whipmaker cord whip. And that little eye can be used to either attach a cracker, or you can attach a falls to that eye. But that eye is anchored deep inside the shop bag. Thanks for watching. This is Chuck with Pocket Snakes, and I've got to let the glue dry, and I won't sit and bore you to death with the glue drying. You have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.